Welcome to the Hangin Banners podcast with your hosts, Tyler Witt.
How about this block here by Tyler Witt? You're going to see him get out in front, and he's going to get a key block that springs this play.
Jack Kochman.
And here he is, having the time of his life.
And Ryan Sartori.
Maybe short, but he's thick.
That's thick with two C's at the end.
Welcome back to the Hangin Banners podcast. It's episode 23. I'm Ryan Sartori alongside Jack Kochman and Tyler Witt. Welcome back. Welcome back to normalcy. We had the punishment episode last week. Now we're back on our regularly scheduled programming. And gentlemen, how are we? Yeah, okay, good.
That's a good way to put it.
I always get scared when I'm done with that little bit of like 30-second
that's
intro.
so fun seeing the panic in your eyes like 30 seconds into it. No, I'm doing well. I'm ready for it. We did talk a lot of sports last week. We were worried Tyler had given the preface that it might not be a lot of sports talk, but we didn't stray too far. So I don't think we derailed too much. We'll be back in it. That stuck around. What do you know? And just like that, my taxi's here.
Oh, and he's gone. All right, cool. Glad to know. It's just you and me, Tyler, the bearded boys of the Hangin Banners podcast. No, but we are back to our regularly scheduled programming. Today, we're talking an awful lot about the reemergence of baseball, and we're talking specifically about the inclusion of some new rules and how we've seen it kind of play out and kind of playing around with the new pitch clock. We're also talking about college basketball as it is conference tournament season. And soon to be upon us is March Madness. And we're going to have some fun today. Tyler, how we feeling?
You know,
I'm
speak, good.
Be open. Speak candidly. It's okay.
You know, I'm having some technical issues over here. But, we're rocking, we're rolling, we're ready to go.
Tyler today, for your audio quality, is raw dogging the iPad microphone. That's his audio today. It's fun. We have different, it's basically a scale, right? You've ever looked at like a Wi-Fi logo, how it's like 1, 2, 3. We've got Tyler raw dogging an iPad microphone. We've got Jack with his gaming headset on, plugged into a laptop.
What brand it is.
And then I'm not here to brag. I'm not here to do anything other than point out the fact that I've got the Shure microphone on the stand with it's okay though. You know why? Because we're here, we're together, and we're talking sports. And Tyler, I know you're a little frustrated right now. You actually look a little dark in the shadows. Maybe let's spread some light on this podcast here early on with Count Your Wins. Sir, you go first.
My win this week is, since I have a lot of free time on my hands right now, I have been exploring the Chicagoland music scene. So I've been going to different shows around, just in the suburbs, right? Like the Chicagoland area. I'm going to a couple shows and checking out some local talent. And I'm very impressed with the range. Like I saw a guy the other day, he did his whole set, 40-minute set. It's like meditation yoga music, and he just gets up there and he just he plays a little chord, then he does his little thing on his like pad, and it just like, loops everything, and it's and it's like the most peaceful music ever. It was insane. So there's some very killer acts around here that aren't very well known, and I'm very excited to be able to listen and potentially work with these people.
And again, you're a third of the Hangin Banners podcast, but professionally right now, even though you're not in football, you still are the owner of a record label.
Yes, that is correct. So I've been using it as an opportunity to scout.
Plug your record label.
Hit us up at Broken Record Music Club on Instagram. You can check out our website too, www.brokenrecordmusicclub.com. We have some cool stuff. We have some cool artists. We had an artist who just released a new single on Friday. So we're really excited about that. He had an article written about it, reviewing it on Buzz Slayers. So that was pretty cool opportunity for him. And we're really excited for what's coming up.
Believe it or not, the mascot of Bus Slayers is also Bussy. It's weird. That's a
So that's
callback.
how they got brought on.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Bussy's actually pulling overtime nowadays. Not only is he working in Portugal as the mascot of their public transportation system, he is also the mascot of this publication that covered one of Tyler's artists. So I got Broken Record Labels is
Music Club.
Broken Record Music Club.
And if you plugged it more on this podcast, I'd have it memorized by now.
I was gonna say you had that URL down for somebody who wasn't even gonna say the name. It like immediately went into infomercial mode. It was kind of impressive. Just flip the switch.
I've been trying to get onto TikTok with it so I can expand and get more fans for my artists. And so I've been like trying to embrace just give us a follow right here and then check out our website up here. And then while you're at it, like give me a follow down here. Like,
Well, it should be easy though, right? Because you have more followers than Jack and I combined. So I mean, you're already an influencer.
No. I'm off that. After the Sartori, like I've got the Shure microphone and a microphone arm. I'm off of the Tyler bragging thing. Today's the Sartori. You're on notice,
I'm
man.
literally out here talking into an iPad. Like,
This is how he makes his TikToks too, believe it or not.
in a poorly lit room.
At this angle.
Yep. Looking slightly down.
This is what I would consider a cool guy shot. There's a lot of really cool guys on TikTok that have this very similar camera angle and light setup that you have for this podcast, Tyler. So today you are an honorary cool guy. Jack Kochman, I know it's probably been an awesome week for you. So I ask you to bring your win to the table.
I would say it's been a good week. I wouldn't say awesome. Not that it's been bad or anything. And my win's pretty small, but I had the chance to play a new-ish board game to completion with some relatives. I had dabbled with them playing this game called Wingspan back in late December, early January. And I don't have as many board games as I like, and I don't play them as often as I want. But I know that this game is highly received, very popular. Just came out 4 or 5 years ago. I think it won the whatever it's called, the Spiel des Jahres, is like some international board game award. Won that in 2019. So I was really excited to play it, and it lived up to expectations. It was such a phenomenal. It was a beautiful game. The objective is you have multiple ways to get points, but you have to essentially play birds. They're like different North American birds that you can play, and then you get points for eggs that you lay. You get points for, if you have certain objectives completed. So the conceit is kind of strange, but it absolutely is, like, as far as modern strategy goes, a little bit of deck building, a little bit of it's not super competitive. You're sort of doing your thing while your opponents are doing their thing. It is an absolute blast of a game, and I'm so glad that it was as good as I was expecting it to be.
I feel like Ryan is really judging right now, but I have to say I had my first like tabletop like board game experience like that at the New Year. For my best friend from high school, his wedding, his bachelor party, he just wanted to play board games. So that's what we did, and I was introduced to all these super awesome games, and they were like, I was blown away by how much fun they were and how strategic and how much goes into them, and I can see the judgment in his eyes up there.
Now, no, mine.
Oh, on my screen, you pointed at me. I'm like, wait, I'm loving this conversation.
Other way. No, you're still pointing at Jack. You got to mirror your camera. Yeah. No, Jack, you got to mirror your camera too. You're pointing nowhere.
Oh, no. All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it, judgy guy, Mr. Fancy Microphone. You can speak so clearly about your board game vitriol.
No, I was just saying that game sounds like it's for the birds.
Oh my
god.
No, dude, like new age board gaming, and the most simple example is like Settlers of Catan. If you guys have ever played that one, that's like the gold standard of I'm gonna try and get some family members or friends to play a game that has a little bit more strategy and thinking than like the Game of Life or Monopoly or Sorry. So like those, I love classic board games, don't get me wrong, but definitely there are not enough hours in the day or days in the year to try all of these amazing games that are being developed around the world.
I do love a good board game session. The issue is getting people together to have a good board game session, because The first hurdle is, again, getting the people together. The second hurdle is making sure that everybody's on the same page, the energy's right, and everybody's enjoying the game the same way. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is you pull a game out, you play a round, or you play like the first half hour of it, and then the energy quickly dissipates, and then there is no more like vigor or energy for what you're doing, and it dissipates into something else. People lose interest. And like, so I think over time, I've kind of grown. I don't know what the word I want to use is, but I've kind of grown like, I guess, tiresome of playing board games because I never get to finish any of them.
Oh, then we gotta find either a neutral location or you come over here. We'll play some board games. Unfortunately, my lines I draw is can't do places with dogs and stuff. But
I don't have a
no.
dog.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, it's shared custody.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, that is one of my issues is because I know that people will try and like flake mid game or, oh, I don't really like it, but I'll play just because everyone wants to. And like, that's not a great experience either. I'm like a connoisseur, like a picture going to a bar and you're like, I would like to have a wine with my meal. What wine should I have? And they'll be like, oh, I have the thing for you. I'm like, I will ask people like, do you want a loud or a quiet game? Do you want team-based? Do you want cooperative? Do you want competitive? Like, I have got games and games and games here. I can bring whatever will suit your fancy. So we'll have
See,
to
and
arrange this at some point.
I do like board games. I do find myself sometimes steering away from the commitment of sitting down for a long board game. But like I enjoy playing dominoes a lot. I enjoy playing, strategy based stuff again. But like as the older brother of a grade schooler, and also Nikki, my girlfriend, has 4 siblings, 12 years old or younger. We end up find ourselves playing a lot of like little kid board games. Like her family came over. Well, her family came over and we had to relearn how to play Yahtzee or playing Uno or stuff like that. And like you can only play those things so many times before you're like, I'm over this. You know what I mean? Like,
Fair enough.
so I would like to get back into board gaming. And maybe this is content. Maybe we just cracked the code on like the first ever not virtual podcast content right there, as we're all going to sit down and play board games together. I don't know.
Yep, people stream tabletop gaming.
We could do Secret Hitler.
You got to get more people involved.
I've played that one, and it is fun.
Yeah. Modern deception game, a lot of those out there too. So no, dude, I could talk the whole podcast just about board games, but I will end my win there and say thank you for my time. I yield the rest of it.
Well, we'll write that down. I'd like to do, now that we're in non-football season, I'd like to do like more like draft type stuff. So I think those are so much fun to do, and maybe we could do a draft of like the best board games. My win this week, I have it written down as a new job is on the horizon. And this is true. A new job is on the horizon for your boy. The job that I have working in country radio is great, and it's sticking around. That is my day job. I have no plans of leaving that anytime soon. But as of recently, I have been added on to the team at Beloit College, and I will be broadcasting games for them this spring. And I'm very excited about it. This will kind of scratch the itch I have for doing sports broadcasting, while I also get to pursue something very cool in an industry that I never thought that I'd work in country radio, working with a legend of country music radio in my partner, Steve Summers. And, being able to get back to sports is something that I think is really cool. So go Bucks. We're calling some baseball this spring. We're calling some softball this spring. We might even dabble in lacrosse this spring. So we'll figure that all out. And it's something that I'm very excited to announce officially as something coming my way. And again, like we get kind of deep on this podcast every once in a while. I've gotten deep, especially in earlier episodes of the podcast, about like the meaning of like picking up work and doing stuff like that. And I know like, I'm not here at all to like toot horns or rub things in people's faces, rather as just kind of showing like a full circle moment of like things can be really bad, and things can feel awful, and things can feel like they're never going to find resolve. But if you just keep pushing and you just keep having that determination, things will change. And that's anything in life, whether it's your professional sphere, whether it's your personal sphere. if you just keep pushing, things will change and get better. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to point out with this. It's a huge win for me. A huge win for, my little trailer household thing I got going on here. We're all very excited. So with that, I yield my time for Count Your Wins.
No, dude, that's awesome. We're all Buccaneers on this podcast now. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. So with that, let's quickly now flip the script. We're going to taint this happiness with not necessarily malice or anger, but the intercepted at the goal line of the week. This is our segment where this is the worst of the week. This is, you can bring it from sports, bring it from your personal life, bring it from wherever. We bring it to the table. We talk about it here. Jack Kochman, lead us off.
No, don't make me lead it off.
Okay, I'll lead it off.
Tyler, yeah, go, or somebody.
I'll lead it off. I don't want to make Tyler bat first both times, so I'll lead off. Mine comes from the world of sports. It just happened a couple of hours ago as we're recording on the 27th, about 5:30. Carson Wentz is once again looking for work. He has been released by the Washington Commanders. He will no longer be their quarterback. This will now be him looking for, I believe, his fourth team in as many years, which is crazy to think about. This fall from grace for Carson Wentz, the number one draft pick, looked like he was making the ascension to the upper ranks of the quarterback scales, if you will. Gets that knee injury, wins a Super Bowl with the Eagles. A couple of years later, gets sent to Indianapolis. From there, gets sent to Washington. Now a for real free agent with still, I think, a lot of money owed to him from whichever team cut him. What a ride for him, though. What a story to think about. Like, number one pick to here.
A small school number one pick too, right? This isn't like, oh, we just overhyped another like major SEC quarterback or something. Like, no, you're coming from FCS, you're coming to the NFL, and it's crazy too that as you were talking about that, I'm like, besides the fact that Carson Wentz has not shown that he's very good at playing quarterback compared to the rest of the NFL in the last couple of years, I actually feel like he'd be kind of good in the Eric Bieniemy offense. So like, I feel like a lot of his skills are maybe lesser versions of better quarterbacks, but like, I feel like his approach to offense isn't so different from Mahomes. Like, definitely takes gutsier throws, is mobile, could run, but doesn't really. It just is like he's a worse version. So I'm like, oh, that actually might have been a fine pairing.
I actually see him as a worse version of Josh Allen. A less durable, worse version of Josh Allen. Big, had the big arm at one point, doesn't necessarily have it now. Josh will make some risky throws all the time, but like, I don't know. Like, he is the poor man's version of either one of those quarterbacks for sure. It would be awesome, Tyler, if muted. We could hear you. No, we can't hear a thing. Raw dog in that iPad, baby. Your mouth is moving. Oh, hey, listen. Take a deep breath. I know you can hear me. We can't hear you. Take a deep breath.
Oh, wait, actually, that's a bad way to do it. You're supposed to wait. Is in through the
your
nose, out through the mouth, right? Yeah.
In through your nose, count for 4. Hold, count for 4. Exhale, count for 4. You keep trying. I will keep doing breathing exercises. Called, right?
Yeah. Square breathing. I
will keep doing breathing exercises with everybody as you figure out your audio.
Welcome Yogi Ryan to the podcast.
Yes. I'm going to shave my head and there he goes.
Drew the line there. I can't do any more of that.
No, we'll get him back in here when he gets back in here. But Jack, I mean, just the storyline on Carson Wentz is a crazy one. Tyler, can we hear you?
I don't know. Can you?
Yes, we can.
Nice.
What
Good
was your
retort.
commentary on Carson Wentz?
I feel bad about his like arc as a player, though. Like you said, like first round draft pick. He started off really hot. Like Philly thought that he was the guy who was going to get him there, right? And then he took that unfortunate injury in the playoffs, so Nick Foles won it for him. Like, you can't say that was Nick Foles' season totally, right? And then just from there, like, you know, he had those series of injuries, and then now he's bouncing around. And it's just, like, so unfortunate to see, like, here he was, the hero of Philadelphia, and now he's free agent that even the Commanders don't want. So it's just tough to see.
I like that you mention it as if like the Commanders are like on the bottom of the list. Like if they don't want you, nobody wants you.
I mean,
They
how many
brought
guys?
They brought an XFL player out of retirement to play for them.
And he's probably going to be their starter next year.
How many players have like been on Washington, gone somewhere else, and you're like, wow, Washington really let that guy go. They just haven't had a lot of great exports either.
Albert Hainsworth.
In like 2011, like
no, I'm just saying, like the list of guys that they brought in, they were like, and then they leave, and like that's the last time you ever hear from them. Is like it's almost like that is the final. It's where elephants go to die. Is like Washington is where elephants die, and football players too.
That's tough. Oh, clever. Okay, I got you on that. That took me a second, but I got you there. Give you a point for that.
So, intercepted at the goal line. We've got mine. I need to hear from everybody else. You guys kind of decide. Oh, okay.
No, life's too good to have an intercepted this week.
I was going. So I had one thing down. I think I'm going to save it for later. I had an interesting call today, and what made me think of it was Ryan talking about his new job. So I'm trying to find a job now. Use my actual degree that I've earned. And I had a gentleman call me today, and it was the worst like sales pitch to get someone to apply for a job that I think I've ever gotten. I was on the phone with this guy for around 35 minutes, and he couldn't help himself but say the same exact things over and over again.
Buzzwords.
He made fun of engineers and called them geeky and slow.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm an engineer, and don't get me wrong, engineers they're different people. They're not as social. They're socially awkward a little bit just because their main focus is like math and school and stuff. And I had the benefit of being a part of the football team and just being in a more social setting where it's not as hard for me. So this guy was trying to pitch me that engineers are nerdy. You're different than that. All right, they're going to give you a personality test first day. They want these like super outgoing people, like willing to take risks. And I'm like, okay. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you the first question. 1 through 5, you pick how accurate this is to yourself. You are spontaneous. So I go 3. And he's like, what? I said 3. I feel like I'm spontaneous sometimes, but I'm like, it's not like an all the time thing. I'm not like just doing random stuff all the time. Tyler, and the guy's like, Tyler, you're making me question if you really are good for this job. I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me because why would an engineer ever be spontaneous, even in this role? And so he goes on to explain what he meant by spontaneous, which was direct and like decisive.
So not spontaneous at all.
This sounds so fun.
That's what I said. I was like, that's 2 completely different things. And he's like, no, it's the same thing. I think we're just talking semantics here. Like, dude, you're completely wrong. Like, and then he's like, yeah, so if you think this is a good job for you, send me your resume. No, I don't want to send you my resume. You don't even know what spontaneous means.
Oh, it sounds like you're being pretty spontaneous with him.
I was being exactly what he wanted me to be, direct. I gave him my answer. Like within a second, I was like 3.
What were you supposed to say there? Like 8 or something? What are you looking for?
Out of 5, he wanted a 4 or 5, I guess. Whatever.
It sounds like he was exactly what he was asking you not to be. Like he was what he didn't want you to be.
pulled out the Likert scale for an over-the-phone question. That's the least spontaneous thing.
Well, and even Nicole, my girlfriend, was listening, and she's like, "This doesn't even make sense." Like,
what were you? Were you trying to get a job in like a secret society or something? Was there some extra level that you were supposed to know about?
Yeah, I had to donate like $200 right now, and then I got like the advanced placement. That was a joke.
Jeez.
Scientology. You know.
So flat. I get it. I'm trying to troubleshoot on my end.
I'm off today.
No, you're 100% on. I'm just troubleshooting on my end because I can hear myself twice. Are we good?
Wait, Tyler, say something.
Yeah, he's there. We're good. We're fine. I'm just trying to figure out the audio. Fun. Okay. We're moving forward. Jack, it is college basketball season. This is where you thrive. And this is actually coming down the home stretch of college basketball season, which is, I think, even more where you thrive. We're getting into the conference tournament season for multiple conferences over, this week, next, and I think maybe even the week after that before we get into March Madness. And so with all of this fun stuff coming up, I kind of wanted to open the floor up to you to just kind of welcome people to college basketball. Maybe somebody out there has been wanting to watch it and they don't know how to watch it. You are, to some extent, an expert on some of these things. So I wanted to kind of open the floor to you to recruit some players, some watchers with non-NIL deals to watch college basketball here this spring.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and this is always one of the tricky things with something that you like or something that you're passionate about, is you just want people to get in any way, right? Like if I put out an album music and you hate 9 of the songs, but you love one of them, but you took the time to listen, you're like, oh, I like that one. Like, all right, cool. Like that's huge for me. I don't care that you didn't like it. You gave it a shot. And I think not enough people have given college basketball a shot because it's never the biggest thing while it's going on, right? College basketball invitational season in the fall starts up while college football is ending. NBA is starting. It's always overshadowed, but this is the time. If you're like, I can't dedicate a whole college basketball season, postseason starts actually in about a half hour with the first conference tournament. So what I love most about college basketball, like this time of year, is I think it has one of the most interesting competitive formats in any organized sport in the world. I would say pretty definitely the most interesting in North America because depending on how you phrase it, we're actually starting the NCAA championship march today. It is a single elimination tournament starting today for some teams because every conference holds their own individual tournament with just their teams seeded and ranked based on their performance in the conference season. And most conferences will only send 1, maybe 2 teams to March Madness. You have your big ones, the Big Ten, we're going to have 9 teams. The Pac-12 is going to send 6 teams or something, but there's a lot of little conferences, and that's what populates our 12 through 16 seeds when the big bracket comes out. And those games, honestly, are just as important for the teams. But if you just like March Madness, you get a little leg up on other people by watching this pre-March Madness playoffs, because now you're like, oh, I actually watched this team and they were pretty good, or this is a story I heard about and I want to follow. So I don't know, would you guys have experience where you're like, you get into a team at the start of March Madness, like the actual big dance, because there's all those either like sappy stories or kind of fun narratives and stuff, but then they just like disappear. Like what's been your exposure with college basketball storytelling? Either.
I'm not a huge basketball guy. I typically like join in when the tournament starts, like for my school. When I was at Western Kentucky, it was the same way, and then Purdue, I've been very fortunate because they're a very good basketball school. So, I typically just try to keep up with them during the tournament. Me and my friends would go to the bar, watch the games and stuff. So, that's typically my tradition. I don't really run with a team. I just kind of watch what I can because again, I'm not a huge basketball fan, so I don't get as excited as you do when the season starts.
My college basketball watching experience and I guess story observing experience is exactly that. Like I observe some of the stories over the course of the season, and then when it comes time to pick the bracket that nobody will ever get perfect, um, I just kind of try to remember the storylines from the season. I think it was last year where nobody wanted the number 1 seed and nobody had really any good idea of how to pick their brackets and stuff like that. That was for me. I was just like, let's make some random guesses and pick schools that are traditionally pretty good in March Madness. Now, I know that this year the Big Ten has been incredible. I know that Purdue has been battling for that number 1 spot all season. I know that, there's been a lot of kind of turnover at that number 1 spot. And especially, in the top 5, there's been some turnover. So I know that it's been a fairly competitive season. And so again, I kind of bring it back to you, Jack, and ask, what are some of the biggest storylines from this season? And maybe the ones that haven't wrapped up yet. What are some of the open-ended ones that as we approach the conference tournament season, as we approach March Madness, what are some of those storylines that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, and with full transparency, this is probably the least college basketball I've watched in 6 or 7 years. I still watch a decent amount, but definitely haven't been as observant as much as just following along. And you're right, there's been a little bit of turnover in the top section. North Carolina's not as good as they always have been. Gonzaga's fallen off, even though they used to run through everybody in the regular season. Houston has been a really strong team, and they were good last year. So you've got some teams rising up that have been good, but not the best. Teams that have been the best that are kind of falling down. And honestly, those things will flesh themselves out much more when the major conference tournaments start. But I think one of the spectacles of March Madness, and you kind of have to frame conference tournament season with regard to March Madness because, like you guys said, that's the thing people care about, right? Is who gives a darn about November, December, January, even end of February, right? Once you get that email from a friend that's join my bracket pool, or it's oh, here's a Squares pool you can sign up for, or, oh my gosh, there's major network broadcasting sports at 11 a.m. on a Thursday. Until all of that stuff happens, it's not too interesting for a lot of people, which is fair. But then you get the Loyola Chicago Sister Jean, or you get the Monmouth Bench Mob, or you get, who was last year, St. Peter's, Doug Eater, the guy that had the face that everyone could remember. Those sort of characters get these major platforms once March Madness hits. Oh, yes.
It looked like Tyler had something to say.
No, never mind. I didn't have to raise I wasn't raising my hand. I was it's my iPad making noises. Jack was talking, and it's like a demon was talking to me through the speaker of my
Boy,
iPad.
you really don't like basketball.
I don't know what's going on.
Embrace it. No, you're good. But yeah, I think this is cool because you get all the small schools, and Tyler, you were saying, Purdue, Western Kentucky, when they were in it, you're following along. Purdue's a lot easier to follow along because they are getting nationally televised games. They're more regularly in the tournament. But I feel like people get attached to the Cinderella stories and the underdogs, and it's the Netflix recommended. If you like this, let me tell you what else. We've got 25 to 30 examples of that going on over the next couple weeks. And I think this is something that I go back and forth on because I don't really like college football. And maybe part of it is it feels more commercial to me than college basketball in the scheme of the sports of it. But definitely the argument pro college sports, spectatorship, is that you have players that have very defined windows of time, right? All of the athletes are competing for however long they're eligible. And so whether it's at the beginning when they're trying to make a name, or the end when they realize that they're either going pro or this might be the last time they really play at the top level of their sport, you have people who are playing their hardest. And that is part of the story of March Madness, is these guys might be playing their last game. You don't know when your last one's going to be, because that's how single elimination works. And all of these conference tournaments are also single elimination. So if you like that sort of evocative emotion, if you like the feeling of, oh my gosh, you don't get to see this sort of passion in sports that often. It's on display for multiple weeks, schools across the country, players in cities you've never heard of or states you forgot existed, and it's really balanced competition. And everything now is able to be watched. Everything's either on like linear TV, cable networks, or streaming platforms. And sometimes it's the conference has their own streaming. Sometimes it's an ESPN Plus or a Paramount Plus or something. But like, this is such picture the World Cup. We didn't talk too much about the World Cup when it was going on. We touched on it here or there, but you have this massive event that is inclusive of literally everyone. Every country has the opportunity to qualify for the World Cup every few years. And people watch because this is the best of all. And that's where I'll get to it. My final point that I'll touch on before we can swing it to another topic or pivot within this one. I'll talk about the competitive format in a little bit. But I'm going to take a quick pause to see if you guys have any responses. Have I inspired you yet? Is there something that you feel like is still missing to hook you in? What do I have to do to sell you?
Well, I think that college basketball in general is sometimes hard to consume because the turnover rate on players is always so high. Like, it's not always that you're going to get like, is it Drew Timmy from Gonzaga? It's not always that you're going to get a player like Timmy who's there for 3-4 years and dominating at that school. It's typically you get like your Zions, you get your
one and done
LaMelos, you're one and done. Exactly, you get your one and done.
Davis,
So I think that it's difficult sometimes for people to get truly invested in the rosters and the schools, because even when they're not one and dones now with the transfer portal and NIL deals and stuff like that, like, truthfully, it's like free agency. I mean, we've talked about it in college football, but with college basketball, I feel like it's even on steroids at times. And so I think that's one of the hardest access points for me, is like trying to get really invested in a roster of guys when typically there is a lot of turnover year to year on a team, which I think is, again, kind of one of my impasses when I get to kind of start watching and stuff. Like, I don't remember any of these guys. What I will say is, one of the things that draws me in no matter what every single year is the fact that there are going to be upsets. There are going to be like soul crushing moments and also like moments of jubilation that coexist. They are the same moment, but for different teams. And it's one of those things that in sports, it's one of the only places you can get that feeling. You know, it's one of the only places you can get that true, like, oh my God, this is incredible. But also, oh my God, that 18-year-old is crying, or that 22-year-old is crying because he just played his last game ever. And like,
that's like the ABC, the wide world of sports, right? Is like the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Like, for somebody to win in sports, somebody else has to lose every time.
The awful, awful stench of defeat.
Yeah. Good one.
So that's kind of where I'm at with college basketball. I will be there. I will be at March Madness. I will be watching, but like, you know, I will also be get in now.
Get in now. You don't have to wait till March Madness.
For you, I will do it. For you, I'll risk it all, Jack Kochman.
Tyler, what you got? You look like you're poking your hand up there.
It's all right. The moment has passed.
No. Get in on the moment, damn it.
Bring the moment back.
I was just remembering last year, who was it? St. Peter's, the Peacocks, upsetting Purdue. I think we were at the bar. I think we were all at Harry's in West Lafayette when we were watching the game, and you could hear a pin drop. Gut wrenching. So being on that side of defeat is awful. And again, and then a couple weeks later, we were watching UNC Duke, and we were cheering for UNC because we were Duke haters. And then, I mean, they came through and won. And it was such a good game, throughout the whole thing. I think for me, it's the length of the season. I don't know if I have it in me. It's the same thing with me for baseball. Baseball is so long. Yeah, and I can watch it every once in a while for sure. A couple games, maybe a week, but there's just so much. It's almost overwhelming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the truth of it is, across sports, you have the top, right? In NFL, that's the Super Bowl. More people watch the Super Bowl by far than will watch any other game. In MLB, it's the World Series. The difference even between the World Series and early playoff baseball is so starkly different, right? The NBA playoffs. People will watch the NBA playoffs, but then the finals, everybody puts that gold standard. Somehow, well, college football has leveraged this too now that they've had a playoff format. College basketball has managed to leverage it into a 68 team tournament that is the finals. Like, there is not a significant increase in viewership in the same way of the finals of March Madness versus early round play because of how they've structured the event. And if you're willing to accept that, then I would say that the conference tournaments are the wild card round of the NFL playoffs, are the wild card round of the MLB playoffs. Where, like, if you like it and you want to know more, you'll watch. And so more people will watch. The viewing numbers won't be great because there's also hundreds of games to watch instead of, a few. But if you just hone in on a few, if you're like, you know what, I really only care about the teams that I think are going to go far anyways. All right, watch the ACC tournament. Like, watch North Carolina Duke play in their own semifinals, even though they've both probably secured a spot in the tournament year over year. Like, there's still meaning to that, even though it's not the big game. And that's the last point I'll make is I think this competitive format is unmatched in North American sports. I think the fact that you can get everybody a chance with the small asterisk of, for whatever reason, teams that have reassigned themselves to new divisions, D2 to D1, they have eligibility issues with March Madness and stuff.
Shout out Bellarmine.
Yeah, Bellarmine, Queens College, both of them playing today. You will not see them in March Madness, even if they win their conference tournament. The auto bid will go to the 1 seed, I believe, not the runner-up even. So that's kind of fishy. But other than that, every team's in it. Ohio State has not been great this year. They're not going to make the tournament unless they go on a run in their conference tournament. And so these guys know that even though at no point in the last 3 months has it looked like Ohio State will play in March Madness beyond a shadow of a doubt, they still are mathematically in it because you can win your way in. And that is so unique because it makes the regular season important. You want to win your games. You want to position yourself in a way where you'll make it even if you don't win this conference tournament. But if you have a star player who gets hurt and misses 2 months of the regular season, or if you made a really tough non-conference schedule and you ended up losing all those games because you booked them 3 years ago, you're not screwed. It's not over. Like, there is still work to be done. And there is no other sport that I can think of in the North American sports league, even across most international sports as well, where you can be this late in a season and everybody's in it. And that's, if you think that's exciting, then watch them be in it. Watch their opportunities, watch them rise, watch them fade away. And like you said, right, the awesome times of players who think that they're going to be done. And a lot of schools have either siblings or kids of parents who played there. Like, college innately has more of a draw, and that's what makes college football so interesting too. It's like, oh man, forget about the actual on-court product. If you like basketball, you'll be fine. If you don't like basketball, I actually think there's a world where you can persevere through because the narrative of college basketball is so much more impressive than almost any other sport.
I will say that I think if there's one sport that does rival the competitive format once we get to playoffs and things, it is college baseball, college softball, because there are the conference tournaments.
Exactly.
You can be god awful all year, and come the end of the year, if you win out in your conference tournament, congratulations, you're going to the regionals. You are probably going to get absolutely annihilated in regionals, but the fact of the matter is you made it.
Right. You got the chance. No, you're right. And that's why, especially with ESPN having a larger hand in that, that's why I think like the college softball World Series and the college baseball World Series have risen in popularity over the last few years and are becoming more watched sports. A, they're more accessible for people to watch, so obviously that helps. But B, I think this is a way for people to go, oh my gosh, this is meaningful baseball to watch at a time when your actual main baseball is less meaningful. And it's the same with basketball. Is like, right now, not every NBA game matters a ton, but every college basketball game has a great impact on how this tournament is set up.
You might even say that there are fewer games right now that matter in professional basketball. There are fewer games that matter than games that do matter. Did I say that right?
Yes, there are probably more games that have no impact or really are not going to change things too much than games that will have an impact. And even college basketball within itself is going through that. Like, Baylor at Oklahoma State today. That is one of the top 25 teams in the country going against a conference opponent. Should be a great game. I don't care about that game. You want to know why? Because the Atlantic Sun tournament is starting, and I need to know if Florida Gulf Coast can reinvent their Dunk City Spark from years ago and make a run as a 10 seed in their own conference tournament, right? Because Baylor's going to make it. What do I care if they win this game? They're going to have a high seed anyways, and sure, every game counts in every sport, but the magnitude of games is why we like to watch the finals of things more than the regular season, because they mean more, right?
100%. There is another important topic that we must get to, that I at least want to get to during episode 23. Shout out to the Jordan Year podcast, though, right? Like
Draymond
this is, Draymond here.
My real goat.
We do need to come around on baseball. I had to bring it up. Jack, I gave you your space. I let you do your college basketball thing. It's time for me to
I'm not opposed to baseball. I feel like I've been painted as too big of a baseball hater on this show.
But you painted yourself.
Well, there are certainly things that I do really hate about baseball, but I don't want it to like dissolve. I don't want baseball to be gone. I just want it to be better.
Well,
that's
one
what
of the
baseball
things
fans want too.
100%. I think one of the things that a lot of people have disliked about baseball is its slow pace and its nature to be slow in between action as well. And by action, I mean literally just putting a ball in between the lines. It doesn't have to be a hit. A fly ball to left field is action in a game. Will it be caught? Will it not be caught? Chances are yes, but there's also that element of, ooh, what's going to happen here? It's getting more action to happen. That was my best Tony Romo a second ago, by the way. So today on Blank You Very Much, I bring to the table the question, I feel blank about the pitch clock being installed. Tyler, I know that you had one take that you really wanted to bring to the table on this. So I want you to kind of lead us here.
So I actually watched baseball because I wanted to see the changes. And, I was watching it with my dad, and the first time I've done that in a while. But sitting down and watching the White Sox play, and you could definitely see the differences, and I think it's a genuinely good thing. Right now, the trend on Twitter is posting videos of comparisons between one pitch versus someone with the pitch clock right now. And the early example I got was Jose Altuve scoring on an inside the park home run versus this one pitch. He scored 7 times. He ran around the bases 7 full times before this guy threw one pitch, pitch clock era.
Right. So the question that was kind of juxtaposed was, how many times can Altuve run around the bases versus in the time that takes this one guy to set up for one singular pitch?
Yes.
7 times around the bases for the shortest man in baseball.
7 times. He threw back to second a couple times. He took forever getting onto the mound. He stepped off a couple times. Like it was ridiculous. The one that I just saw was the comparison between that same clip of the one pitch versus one guy pitching a full inning with the pitch clock. So, that comparison alone is, it's going to save so much time in games.
Listen, this is the interesting part about the pitch clock is when you compare the game time of an NFL game and the action time of an NFL game, they are almost identical to the run time and action time of an MLB game. I've talked about it on this podcast before. I talk about it ad nauseum when I talk about baseball in general. The time between action is what matters in these changes, right? We are talking about every 40 seconds, a brand new play happens in the NFL. Will it be a 60-yard bomb? Will it be a run that gets ripped off for 40 yards? Will there be an interception, a turnover? What could happen? Like the anxiety, the anticipation of every play in football matters. So every 40 seconds, you're getting action. In baseball, sometimes it's 3.5 minutes before there's a ground out to shortstop. And so all of these rules are designed to help bring more action to you quicker. And I don't think that there is a problem with that. I am very happy that in the brief time that we've seen the pitch clock installed in MLB baseball, the major leagues, it's been in the minor leagues, but in the 3 days now that we've had a pitch clock in Major League Baseball, I have seen no critique by major league baseball players. Everybody seems to be okay with it. I think everybody maybe has to be okay with it. There maybe has been some agreement behind closed doors that we're not going to openly talk about this. We want it to be accepted by the fans. We don't want them to have an extra avenue to maybe dislike this thing. But at the end of the day, I think it's incredibly compelling. There was a game, it was Red Sox Braves in a dream situation. Tie game, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, and the game ended on a violation. The batter didn't get in the box with 8 seconds left on the pitch clock. An automatic strike is called, and the game's over. It ends in a tie because it's a spring training game. That is so crazy that can happen. Like, put that on a 162 game sample size. There's bound to be a couple of situations like that where, oh my God, bases were loaded, and with 3 balls to the count, the pitcher didn't throw the ball in 20 seconds, and we just got the lead by happenstance. Like, that is, I think that's very cool. And I think that my dad said it great. I was talking to him earlier on the phone. I think he said it wonderfully in saying, if you're keeping score, which I don't know how many people keep score today outside of me and some 70-year-olds that sit in the bleachers. But if you're keeping score, you can't go to the bathroom. You can't get up and leave because you don't know what might happen. Also, now with the bases being bigger, like, it's going to massage the running game. People are going to run more. Pitchers can only step off and throw over 2 times an inning. Like, this is going to matter so much more to baseball than people think. And I haven't heard any critiques of it. So how do I feel about the pitch clock? I feel great about it. And even that little thing in the back of my head that says this is infringing upon the fabric of the game, I even shut him down and say, yeah, but we are in 2023 and things have to happen to keep us kind of modernized and keep us on pace. Tyler, you bring up an excellent point. Pedro Baez is the pitcher that you're talking about, and he is not the only perpetrator of taking forever to throw the ball. Let's look locally here. You guys are both White Sox fans. Michael Kopech is one of the slowest pitchers I've ever seen in my life. He'll walk around
slower, I think.
And he'll walk around the mound 3 times before he's ready to throw another pitch, just to throw 104 over somebody's head. I watched this weekend Max Scherzer strike out Joey Meneses of the Nationals. I watched Max Scherzer strike him out in 27 seconds.
That's so cool. Like, that's so cool to say.
It's insane. How that happens is only through this rule. Scherzer's not getting that ball and going. And it's crazy to see the timing of the batter so messed up. He was absolutely derailed by the fact that Scherzer said, okay, pump you a fastball. Give me that ball back. Pump you another fastball. We are 15 seconds into the exchange before Scherzer says, okay, here we go, and throw another one at him. Joey Meneses started looking around like, what just happened? The fact that you can mess with timing like that now, I think is very cool. I think that we need to see this over the course of a season. There's going to be different iterations of this. We're going to see loopholes exposed already. Boog Shambi, play-by-play guy for the Cubs, made an excellent point. The loophole already is that the pitch clock doesn't start until the ball hits the pitcher's mitt. So what's the loophole? Your catcher hangs onto the ball. And who's controlling the pace of the game anyway now? The catcher, right? So, if he sees his pitchers laboring, if Max Scherzer can't get it done in 27 seconds, well, now we're just going to hang on to the ball for a second, wait for him to catch his breath, now throw it back. Now we've just effectively made 40 seconds for him. Do I think that's going to happen all the time? No, but it's there. It's available, so we're still figuring some things out. The main thing that I've been telling anybody who doesn't like it or has some sort of criticisms, and I've said it here before, it took the NFL 7 years to figure out what a catch is, and we still don't know what a catch is.
Yeah, I think the player's willingness to try is always a telling thing too, right? Take the NFL as an example. Fans will get their fires fueled by the fact that players disagree with the way that some things happen on the field. And if the players don't like it, then we probably don't either. And the fact that we haven't heard MLB players who have over the last few years become increasingly vocal about things that they don't like in the game, at least a handful, that's probably a good sign. It doesn't mean that they like it yet, but it means that they're giving it a try. And that's why I would say I feel excited about the pitch clock being installed, because this is not necessarily what baseball will be for the rest of time, but this is a step in the direction of how we want baseball to look. And maybe it's a little off the path. Maybe it's exactly where we're headed. But I think the idea that they're changing it is super exciting, because forget about baseball's ways, just any sport. When they take this innovative of a step for any reason, it has to be fascinating, because it's like any given play. We don't know if it'll work or not, but it feels different. And it shows that they're trying to change, which has been baseball's biggest problem for years, is, like you said, that little guy in the back of your head doesn't want change. But change doesn't have to be bad. It just might be hard. And so I'm very excited about how this is working. And I'm very interested to see how baseball pundits react and how things change as time goes on. Do we learn more loopholes? Do we close them up? Do we figure out, like, there was somebody complaining, I had seen a few on Twitter, of the game's going too fast now, but you look and pitchers aren't using the full clock. Batters aren't using they can choose to go faster than it. It's very similar to tennis when they added a serve clock. Everyone's like, why should you mandate how much time it takes? It's like, well, because it's on both parties. The pitcher has to be ready and the batter has to be ready by a certain time, just as the server and returner. This isn't a one-sided issue. We're altering the game a little bit. So no, I'm thrilled to see what happens.
I'm very excited for it. I think that, when you look at who is in charge of making some of these decisions, it's Theo Epstein, who is quite literally he's his own thinker. The issues that we've seen with baseball, the 3 true outcomes and things like that, were technically his doing, and the way that rosters were kind of constructed and things. But it revolutionized the game to a certain extent. But who can have the foresight 10, 15 years down the road to see, like, oh, this isn't going to be good for the game. It's only going to be good for predicting how the roster should look. So then when he leaves the Cubs, he goes to the front office, and now we're in this situation where he's currently trying to undo some of his doings over the past 2 decades of him running baseball teams. And I think, honestly, if this is a successful thing, the next commissioner of baseball is Theo Epstein. Call it a hot take, call it whatever you want. I just think that is the next step for him if things go well here. And so to kind of close this thing out, I bring it back to Tyler to ask an official, I feel blank about the pitch clock. I don't know, maybe I was just too excited to talk about this and didn't hear your actual answer. But what is your fill in the blank here?
I feel excited about it. I think one of the things that you were touching on that just made me start to think was, with Max Scherzer speeding up as much as he did, do you see a rise in tempo pitchers, like almost like a tempo offense for football? Do you see pitchers that go out there and are strictly that, to catch them off balance, and then you bring in a reliever who's a lot slower to mess with the batter's timing? Like, these are different scenarios that could play out now and make it just that much more interesting, just with one little change, I think.
I think that it's a beautiful thing you bring up, right? Like, when you think about the way a bullpen is constructed, do you have a guy who is just like a crazy cardio, like berserker, who's able to come in and like finish off an inning in a minute because he's just like, get the ball, go, get the ball, go, get the ball, go? That's obviously hyperbolic, but like, you have your long innings guys that when the starter can't go 5 innings, they're in to eat up 3 or 4, and you've got closers and setup men and guys who can only work an inning. Do you now have tempo guys? Do you have guys that you throw in there to say, okay, you throw fast, these guys are taking their time today, we think that we can really capitalize on this inning, we get through their 3-4-5 or their 4-5-6 with our tempo guy just absolutely blowing them away with whatever stuff he's got. And if you are a tempo guy and you've got a fastball at 99 and a slider at 82 and a changeup at 81, like, you're going to absolutely murder people. So I think it's a great thing to think about. And I think, and maybe this, again, I am always willing to admit my biases, but I think that this is also one of the wonderful things about baseball is, like, I think the thinking and like the makeup and the strategy and things is one of the most beautiful things about the game of baseball. And do the new rules change some of your strategies? Of course they do.
Do
But
you
it
think
also
do you
adds new
think that
strategies into the game.
do you think that strategy in baseball had been watered down a bit in the past, like, 6 to 7 years comparatively from, like, other changes? Because that's one thing that I sort of felt, but also
Mm.
I don't know the ins and outs, that I'm excited because I think this brings more tactics back to baseball. But I felt like each baseball game had become, over the last maybe decade, increasingly normalized, where most teams were playing the same way. The model was similar, and a lot of managers sort of operated at a replaceable level. Whereas now I think there's more value on like a tactician or like somebody who can live react to things quickly. You don't just go in with a game plan and ride it out each day.
Yes, and I think that that's exactly the reason. Like the the thing that you bring up, this like everything feels very watered down and feels very much uniform and stuff like that, is exactly what happened to offenses, right? Like these three true outcomes that I bring up, like the home run, strikeout, or walks. Those are the only three things that we want out of our offense. Like that happens all over the field. When that's what the offenses are predicated on, you can then predicate your defense on stopping that. And so, yes, things are going to start feeling more and more uniform. And so, when you throw a major wrench in the plans and completely switch up the way things are done, yeah, it's going to revolutionize the way that people think, because it has to revolutionize the way people
Right.
think.
Right.
You
Eat or
know,
beat, and you got to figure it out to stay up there.
Exactly. And again, Tyler, I think the bringing up the idea of a tempo pitcher is somebody that's on your roster, and like this is your thing. And also the existence of like a Terrence Gore or Billy Hamilton, or like these guys who are very specifically late season ads to make sure that you have a base stealer in the playoffs. They there is going to be a place for them on the 25, 26 man roster moving forward for possibly 162 games, because now speed is so much more important to the build of your roster, because the bases are bigger. And again, the pitcher can only step off twice. And there's a timer. There's a literal fucking timer that says, okay, if he's not throwing over with a second left, I can time this and go. And that's what they want. Like stealing bases is fun, and action is fun. And baseball this season, I think, is going to be way more fun. And that's all that matters. At the end of the day, is the game more fun? I don't care about your grandpa's version of baseball. I don't care about my version of baseball from 5 years ago. What I care
Yawn.
about is the advancement of this game and the modernization of this game, so that more people can enjoy it with the enthusiasm that I do, right? And I will adapt, and I hope other people do too. And I hope that this brings more people to the game, because it's the greatest sport in the world, in my opinion. And it's the only thing on in the summer, so you better fucking like it. So very productive conversation here. I love this. I love talking baseball on this podcast. I don't know if you could see my eyes light up. And I want to keep it on baseball for just a second as we move into low hanging fruit. Again, you guys are White Sox fans. This is going to start as something that I don't want to make fun of at all, and conclude with something that we can definitely poke fun at. Mike Clevenger was a offseason ad, one of the only offseason ads for the Chicago White Sox. And Mike Clevenger has been around the league with a couple of different organizations, has a reputation that kind of precedes him. I can't say anything with certainty. These are all only alleged accusations of him. But over the offseason, there was a major story that broke about Mike Clevenger in possible situations of domestic abuse, a domestic assault with his assumed former wife, could be current wife. Either way, he's faced this. The White Sox have handled it with the discretion that you would think they would handle it with. None. He shouldn't, in my opinion. A guy like that shouldn't probably be on your roster, especially when you're investing 1 year and a couple $1 million into him. That's somebody that you could say, we're probably better without the sideshow this year, given where our team has been the past couple of years. Also, not to minimize domestic abuse as calling it a sideshow, just what it would probably be seen as from a organizational standpoint. But recently, 670 The Score, the Parkins and Spiegel show had his ex-wife and the victim of the domestic abuse on to talk about the situation and kind of tell her side of the story. They were very journalistic about it. I thought. I listened back to their interview, and now here is the part of the story that we can kind of poke fun at. Mike Clevenger contacted the show saying that his lawyers are going to sue them for defamation and that they are listening to the show and that they are, he was very much trying to big dick them, so to speak, like my lawyers and this and that and legal speak. And I think that it's incredibly funny to listen to somebody who may or may not have perpetrated this thing, but also has the reputation to precede him, to then go to a radio station which is covering things journalistically, which is what you do if you are a radio personality, journalist, etc. I think that it's incredibly funny for somebody to go and try to do this sort of thing. It just seems like the type of thing that somebody who did something would do to try to cover up the fact that they're not actually doing. Regardless of it all, I think that it's kind of low-hanging fruit. I wanted to kind of bring it to the table, see what you guys thought. Maybe I didn't set it up the best way, but either way, I bring it to you guys. Anybody?
I mean, I definitely think it's an important conversation to have, right? Like, the fact that they were willing to sit down with the victim and get her side of it, like, I feel like that's something that's so not customary in like our media, like in the sphere of media. Like you see a lot of like, oh, it's the baseball player side of it or the athlete side of it, and you don't really hear about the victim until further on down the road. And it's so important to, especially to get her side, and them being like a Chicago-based radio station, and it's not like it was just like a general like newspaper outlet or like another media outlet that wasn't integrated in sports. Like the fact that it was The Score, which is one of the biggest sports radio stations in the Chicago area. Like I think it is very important that it happened. But again, like you said, like the fact that you're cut like, oh, I'm going to sue you for defamation. Like if you have nothing to hide, then wouldn't you kind of just be silent?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's the taking a page out of the recent Brett Favre playbook, right? They're like, well, and I guess if you were to really just think about it purely logically and take the emotion of the situation out of it, which is not the right way to approach it, but if you did, you would understand, like, yeah, if you're being wrongfully accused of something on a public platform, like slander, libel, defamation, like these are things that people actually do have to seek out sometimes. But I think especially in the wake of Brett Favre lashing out at different like national media groups and being like, oh, well, actually, you want to talk lawsuits, so you're going to get in a defamation suit with me and my lawyer. And it's like, you might have defrauded a whole state out of millions of welfare money for like a volleyball court. So you probably, the point here is you don't want this attention on you. And especially for a guy like Mike Clevenger is not a hometown hero by any stretch of it. This is, like you said, he's short time. It's going to be a short stint at maximum, regardless of how this turns out. A 1-year deal and probably not coming back for too many more seasons. Also, most famously played for a division rival of the Chicago White Sox. So it's like, you're not getting the community on your side with this. It's just, I guess, like, trying to catch a extra bundle of money or something. Like, yeah, if I get something out of this, maybe the court sees it my way, and then I also get it from these guys. But why, dude? Like, just, I don't know, let it be, right?
I guess the humor that I find in this, because the things that we bring to the table in this segment are supposed to be somewhat humorous, is maybe not like a belly laugh chuckle, but more of just like ain't that just a bitch, right? Like for him to kind of come out publicly and try to defend this instead of just trying to just lay low, whatever. Like I just think it's funny that the way things are handled sometimes. I'm not doing it justice on how I feel, because I do find a certain amount of humor in a situation like this.
That's like
it's
like
farcical
humor, right? It's like
exactly.
Tormented, I think is the right word. It's like how are we here? How is this guy a guy that I know and I have to listen to this what had to happen for this to be the thing that I have to hear about multiple times in a week? Like, it's cosmic,
This is
right?
why I keep Jack Kochman around. You're like my anger translator. Every time when I get a little bit too deep into a half-baked idea, Jack Kochman is there to pull me out. He's like, come on, come on. We also have more low-hanging fruit, far less contentious, way more fun, and a couple of beaks involved as well, Tyler.
My low-hanging fruit this week is it's combine week. And the horde
whoa, back up. I thought we were talking about parrots.
I switched.
Yeah, he switched.
So now I'm talking about beaks, and everybody thinks I'm crazy.
It was a weird transition to begin with. Let's hear about the combine.
It's known for the horrendous takes. I saw a take today from one of the top analysts say that Bryce Young is measured officially at 5'10", and that is going to severely alter his future, and everyone should not consider him a top prospect anymore, when in reality, he's going to be still a top 5 pick. Like, it's just these just super blasphemous things. Like, oh, his hands are small. He's got 9-inch hands. Like, right. Like, just silly stuff. Like, you're gonna hear it all this week as the measurements come out day one, and then the 40-yard dash comes out, and you're gonna hear about all these crazy. Oh, well, this is a super good 40 for someone, or like this guy ran his 40 too slow. And there are people who make their decisions strictly on these numbers that, in the grand scheme of things, don't mean anything. So enjoy the shit show of the combine, and I'll still watch it, and I enjoy watching. I have 5 former teammates in the combine this year, so
Nice.
Super excited to watch them, and wishing them well, obviously, but I really hope they're not the victim of all these critiques that in the grand scheme of things don't mean anything.
So is there a worse segment of sports social media? This, I think, is bottom 2 for me, and I'm not sure which, than overindulgent combine heads. Because you're right, watching the combine is a cool thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, these people are so good. They're like, how did this guy not get drafted? I watched him do some crazy things on TV. Why is he going on day 2? And it's like, they're all just so impressive of just physical specimens. And then you have the people like you're talking about, where it's like, oh yeah, so actually his thumb to pinky length is in such a way where really maybe plateaus as a backup journeyman quarterback or something. You're like, what are you talking about? That has to be the worst sports social media Twitter thing. Can you guys think of anything worse than that?
I agree that it is the worst. But in the great scheme of things, what does this matter to you? I'm hitting someone in the chest, or I'm trying to block someone. This doesn't matter to anyone. Or I guess the hand size goes correlates with the ball of the NFL. In reality, if they can throw a football, they can throw a football. They've been training with this for months. You don't think they can sling it? They're gonna do their pro day and the combine stuff with the ball, but God forbid they get measured at a 9-inch freaking pinky to thumb. It's the most stupid thing ever about the combine and the pre-draft process, in my opinion.
Listen, I think the combine has a purpose, obviously, right? You have to have these things tested. You're making an investment into your future. If you're a top 5 drafter, if you're a top 10, 15 drafter, you are making a gigantic investment into the future of your organization and its success. So you want to know absolutely everything you can about these players. But I will say that every year we see somebody who does phenomenally at the combine. They shoot up draft boards. Everybody's already making assumptions of who it's going to be. There are 2 quarterbacks in mind that everybody's just like, how are these guys in the conversation right now? It's because everybody's kind of assuming that they're going to kill it at the combine. How often do you get a chance to hit 4.4 speed on a football field? Yes, I know that translates to agility and that burst and whatever, but 4.4 speed is super cool. but how often are you streaking down the sideline with your 4.4 speed? And it's super cool to see the shuttle drill, but how often are you really like in and out of like the shuttles and things like that? I think the things that matter are at the combine are things that rarely get talked about. And that's the interview process. And that's like your catching drills and your throwing drills and your things like that. But like, we always just get kind of wrapped up in these, like non-essential football things. Like Tyler said, like these mittens are for blocking humans. And like, let me show you how strong I am. Let me show you how fluid my footwork is. Let me show you how I handle like the weight of another human being, rather than just judging me off of my broad jump or my vertical jump or something like that. It boils it down too much almost.
So, okay, I'm going to spin the question instead of the social media stuff. I want to know.
Hold on. Before we get to a different question, Tyler, did you have a rebuttal?
I just think like one thing that also like bothers me about it, I think there's layers to it. Like, yes, I think this process is like super flawed. Like half these tests, like some of these athletes shouldn't have to do. When is a lineman running 40 yards? Why is that relevant? If the 20-yard only matters, or the 20-yard split only matters, why don't you have them run a 20? Or the 10-yard split matter? Why don't you have them run a 10? But I encourage everyone listening to, as you watch the combine, the top prospects will be the ones that the commentators solely focus on. And I think that is such a crime, because there are 20-something athletes in each position group, at least, that have earned the right to be there, and they deserve to have their careers highlighted as well. Not the people who are guaranteed to go day one. Like, there's so many people, like, I'm trying to remember last year. There was that tackle from Alabama. I'm forgetting his name. He plays for the Giants. Evan
O'Neal.
Yes. He didn't even participate. And they spent several drills of other people actually like going through the drill, talking about him. And I couldn't believe how frustrating it was, because at the end of the day, like, I want to hear what they have to say about these other linemen. Like, not the top 5 that are there. And so I challenge you to pay attention to that and notice if it's like that big of an issue, or if it's just me being super picky.
Yeah, well, so Jalen Carter is going to be that guy this year, because Jalen Carter announced this morning that he's not going to be doing drills and things at the combine, and they're probably going to spend an endless amount of time talking about Jalen Carter. But there are so many DTs in this draft that are ridiculously good. There is a deep position. The same thing with cornerback. There is an endless amount of cornerbacks in this draft. And I guess the other thing, Jack, and then we'll transition to your additional question, is like, I don't know how much a 10th of a second matters on a football field. Like, I don't know, when you're saying like, okay, you're the fastest person in the offensive guards. I understand that football is all about explosion, especially now guards are all about pulling and things like that. And I'm just nitpicking on one position, but I don't know what it means for a guard to run a 4.7 versus a 4.6. I don't know what that means. I don't understand how that translates to a football field. I guess maybe the shuttle drill would. I guess maybe the broad jump might translate to the football field. But Tyler, I think you make a great point when there's just certain things that certain position groups shouldn't have to do.
Well, and that's actually the root of my question is, at what point do we think the time matters? Like, if they just did it in half seconds, or if they just did it in full second, like, that's the measuring things to the 100th generates so much unnecessary conversation. Because, like you said, what's the difference? You said 4.7, 4.6. Think about how much time they're going to spend talking about 4.62 versus 4.65. And it's like, if that's what's make or breaking something for you, then your scouting process maybe wasn't all aimed in the right direction. But obviously you do need to know, right? Because I don't want a guy who runs a 5.3 at the same position as a guy who runs like a 4.5 maybe, because that's actually like a substantial difference. So that I'm like, at what point could we chunk them? Or maybe it's a percentile thing. Like, how do we fix that? What is it? You either ran a 4.5 or 5 or a 5.5, like, and then you just round. There's got to be some way to group it that's both digestible and useful to the viewer and the team without being unnecessarily mathematical.
I do also want to bring to the table, and Tyler, answer this question for me. Like, I feel like the combine is a lot like a test. Like, think about your time in school for a second, and like all of the information that you need to know for the test, you really accumulate right before the test. You take the test, and then it's all gone, right? Like, I don't remember what all the answers were to my 7th grade history test, but maybe some of it sticks around, maybe some of it doesn't. For whatever reason, you get rid of that type of stuff. When you're going into the combine, everybody is training for this one moment. They get those numbers, and then maybe they do a pro day after that. And then for the most part, like you might run a 4.4 at the combine, but then a month later you're running a 4.6 because you're not training for that thing every day. Am I right or wrong here?
So yes, essentially, yes, you are correct. None of these drills have literally anything to do with actually playing football. So the way it was described to me, because a pro day, for those of you who don't know, a pro day is essentially the combine, but it's for everyone. So you just do it at your school. Some scouts will come depending on, the type of talent coming out of there. But the way my trainer told me when I was going into my pro day training was, this is stuff that you're training for this, and then it's done. Like, it's over. I bought a pair of cleats to run my 40 in that I haven't worn since, and I won't wear ever again because they're wide receiver cleats. Why did I buy them? Because they were super light, and I needed to be fast for some reason. Like, I agree with what Jack is saying, though, as far as like I think grouping them is kind of good. Like, because you don't want a linebacker that runs the same speed as an offensive lineman.
No.
Right. No. That's obviously very poor, but does the 100th of a second matter? Like, it in the grand scheme of things, no. Like, and to be honest, no one says the 100th. Like, when I tell people what I ran my 40, and I ran a 5.1, not a 5.19. Like, I'm not going to round it up. I'm going to do what makes me sound better.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we hear that.
And another thing about it is, like, yes, the combine, like, these results, like, people consider them to be truth, but last year at the combine, they had an error in their system, and there was like a group of like 5.40 times that were slower than, or were like a couple tenths slower than they actually were. So it's like these groundbreaking, like, oh my God, like, this guy's like, he's almost there. Like, he almost broke the record. Like, no, he didn't. It was timed incorrectly. And that's the way it is as a pro day. Like, scouts are going to write down their time that they got, and they're going to, like, get together, and they're going to say, what was the average, or like whatever, like, what'd you get? They're going to write down another time. And it's like, it's all guesswork. Like, no one has the exact right time. And if you're doing it outside and it's hand timed, like, oh, they don't consider the wind. There's like all these factors that go into it, and they don't care. It's just a number that they have to collect and bring back to their organization, and then that's what they base their whole decision on, or not their whole decision, but like for guys who are on the fringe, that's what they consider.
I've never understood why we don't weight like the Senior Bowl more than we do the combine, because on the field stuff to me would matter more than some number that may or may not be right. Like, Jack, your point was just proved by Tyler, by him saying that, like, some scout gets his number and all he needs is the number. Like, whether it's right, wrong, whether it's within a 100th of a second or outside 100th of a second, whatever the standard deviation is there, like, does it actually matter, or is it just something that we've placed a lot of value on?
I mean, you do need to isolate the variables still at some point, right? Like, the game action is obviously important, but that's where you look at like college football games that they played in, because the context, if you think the context of like, was it windy? Was I wearing a new pair of cleats? Like, if you think those things have a big impact,
fully shaved?
There are so many things that happen over the course of a live football game. You couldn't even count the number of variables there, right? So, like, even though it might replicate more closely game action and stuff, there are so many more confounding things. So I do appreciate that there is a need for like baseline numbers, the same way that you might get your yearly physical or you get health advice. We have like the 2,000 calorie diet. Well, depending on what you do for a job, maybe 2,000 calories isn't enough, or maybe it's too much, right? Like there are, of course, variables, but you have to try and standardize it a little bit because it is still important. Let's say that the Chicago Bears, for example, I don't know how many scouts they have. Let's say they have a scouting team of 100 people, right? That cannot cover every collegiate football program in the country thoroughly at a number of positions. So you do need like little shortcuts every here and there that at least are, should I put my eyes on this guy? Oh, this guy's faster than all the other linebackers. Like I hadn't taken a look at him before. I didn't know that. Let me take a look. And obviously that's a very reductive version of scouting because you probably should have some gauge on the fastest linebacker in college before the day of. But I think the point is you do need these numbers to an extent. You just don't like, okay, you ran a 4.41 and I ran a 4.41, but I actually ran a 4.413. Like, why don't we go to the 1,000th? At some point, the margins are no longer important. And that's where I'm interested is where can we make the margins optimally important and meaningful? Because I don't care about your 100th of a second or your extra quarter inch in a vertical jump. Like, all right, doesn't matter. If this guy's better at timing his jump, then I'd rather take 2 inches off and have the pass broken up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have very strong feelings about this. Like having gone through it myself, like it is very much like a test mentality. Like you go in and you can't do bad on this. Like you have to do at least somewhat well to even be considered. And for all of that, like if I'm a good enough of a player on the field, that should matter more. And I do think that the Senior Bowl and all those senior games should hold more weight than straight up like your pro day or like your combine performance. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a flawed system, and there are better ways to go about it, or making more drills like relevant to like your position. Like it would make more sense for me to instead of doing a pro day, maybe you have a day where you bring in O-line, D-line, and you have them do drills against each other. Like you could do that at every school because you're going to have like a couple guys. And if not, then you could combine with another school nearby. Like there's always smaller programs looking to be at bigger pro days. So, help out everyone. Make everyone look at it, or at least give everyone a chance. Like there's ways that you could do this better. And they're just blindly following it at this point.
Well, realistically, the NFL's standardized test will probably be happening as this podcast releases, so it'll be very timely. The combine is March 3rd through the 5th at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. You can't go unless you've been invited, so we won't be there as players or as media members. I honestly don't have time for that either. So we'll leave this here for now. I do think that all of us should pay attention to the combine as it does happen. So maybe we can address some of these things later. Be like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. He ran a tenth of a second faster than the best wide receiver there, and they were still talking about the best wide receiver. Or what does it mean that Taurus Osiris or whatever the guard from Florida, he ran 0.3 of a second faster than this guy that's projected to go in the 5th round. So why we'll talk about probably all of it next week. I'm sure we'll have another little breakdown of the NFL Combine. But for now, let's bring it down the home stretch, gentlemen. We're going to hang a banner. And Jack Kochman, tell everybody what you brought to the table.
I already brought it to the table, but now I get to officially hang a banner because we're at the end of the show. And so This is probably, depending on the longevity and the shelf life of this podcast, will not be the last time that this receives a banner. But conference tournament season started a half hour ago. I'm already checking scores and stuff. So you guys get a banner for all the reasons that I listed earlier. Congratulations, NCAA.
Well, we'll wrap this thing up quick then, so you can go catch the first round of the which tournament is it?
The Atlantic Sun, Florida Gulf Coast currently leads Queens College 31-30 for those wondering. Ooh. And 2 days later, not noticing that game already finished 2 days earlier.
That is correct. All right, Tyler Witt, hang a banner, brother.
My banner this week, I've had some stuff shift around in the show. I'm going to say what I had for low-hanging fruit for next week. But the bulls of pro bull riding if you gentlemen or any of the listeners have sat down to watch a professional bull riding event recently, these bulls are juiced this year. I saw one on Twitter absolutely bulldoze a rider. It is the bulls are winning an exorbitant amount of matches, I guess you could say, versus the riders. And it's just not a good season for riders. And that's like an important factor in bull riding. So shout out to the bulls. Hang it up there. They're going crazy. They're plowing over dudes. Yeah, it's been a good time. Good run for PBR right now.
Oh my gosh. You need to get into Tyler, are you in on like stocks and markets and things like that at all? Because I think there's like two categories of people, right? They have bulls and they have bears. And it seems like you were once a bear, but now you're a bull. I wonder if this is a tone setter of a banner.
No. I'm still a bear. But I saw this, and I've been seeing a ton of bull clips on like my Twitter feed, my Instagram feed for some reason. And
where does your internet live?
Animal Planet.
A lot of animals.
Have you seen Cocaine Bear?
I have not seen Bear yet. Very excited though. I've heard it's good.
The animal segment of this podcast is always brought to you by Tyler Witt. He's got all your animal content. You should start your own animal-based podcast under the umbrella of like Hanging Banners Studios or something like that. Like, I'd be like, hey guys, we're yucking it up today about armadillos.
It's called iPad Studios, and it's recorded live from my iPad. No headset.
Listen, I never want you to raw dog the audio on the iPad ever again.
This will never happen again. If it does, I'll retire from podcasting.
Another punishment episode.
Also, this is my Hangin' Banners trivia fact of the day in our Hangin' Banners history. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, but you have played football for Western Kentucky, Purdue. It was Winnipeg. And then you were rostered with DC in the XFL. So of all the sports mascots, you have never played under the mascot of an animal.
I was a Nighthawk in the IFL.
There had to be one. I'm like, what are the chances that this dude is always talking about animals and has somehow dodged all of the animal team names?
Also, in high school was a hilltopper. Anything in like grade school? Were you ever like a Mustang or something?
A junior cat. That's what the PJC junior cats. That's what we were.
Okay.
I think like when you're like playing like just like as a little kid, they just kind of assign you a team. So like you could be the Seahawks, you could be I think I was the Seahawks once. I don't have too many other like animal teams that I played for.
Yeah. Weird. Interesting. Okay.
All right, I bring us down the home stretch now with my banner for the week. It goes to time because it is apparently on the account of one minor league baseball player named Ryan Fitzgerald being manipulated by MLB. It's the biggest conspiracy out there right now in professional sports. He tweeted and said that he played with a pitch clock in AAA for the 2022 season. Never felt rushed, never saw less than 10 violations over 150 games. But after playing in what was Saturday's game that ended in a tie, I've never felt more rushed to get in the box. The clock this year is not the same as last year. So Ryan Fitzgerald, I think, is insinuating that somehow time is being expedited at the major league level, and he simply cannot keep up with whatever MLB is doing to time heist the pitch clock.
Dude, what a trippy take. I don't know what's wrong, but clocks are moving at a different pace.
They're juicing the clock now?
Oh, that's a fun one. Oh, this was MLB. The Saturday, it was an MLB spring game, right? Or is he still minors?
This was the game that ended in a tie. This was now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know for certain, but this could have been the same guy that was up to bat when the violation was called. I have to go back and look at it now. I should have been more prepared than this, but it could be that this is the same guy that just got rung up at the end of the game, and now he's just making up excuses, and maybe it's not a time heist at all. He's just like, man, I don't know. I didn't lose.
if you were in this guy's inner circle, like a relative or a close friend, would you be nervous to tell him that maybe it's just because Major League Baseball is scary for the first time? Like there are a lot of reasons. Maybe you're just nervous. No. Trust me, they have changed the way time works. I heard it. There's 64 seconds in a minute now, and it's thrown everything off. Oh man.
What a crazy take. Like, it's going so much faster today. Like, I don't have the clock's running early today.
Dude, do not tell this guy about daylight savings. That's going to send him spiraling.
We lost a whole hour. What the fuck is going on?
Nobody tell him.
He's like, MLB! He just starts wearing like a tinfoil hat and ripping out his hair. He's like, MLB! Screaming at the sky.
Oh, God.
All right, well, that crazy take takes us to the end of episode 23 of the Hangin Banners podcast. I'm Ryan Sartori. That is Jack Kochman. That's our good friend, Tyler Witt. And we'll see you guys again next week. I'd like for all of us to say peace at the same time and see how loud it echoes when I unmute Tyler. Are we all ready? No, he's on a delay too. 3, 2, 1. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah, dude. Time to go.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that look into sports, Brian. Yeah. And when we come back, we'll have one final look at weather. Stay tuned.